4 Knowles driver and 4 Sonian driver, low pass filtering mode, CNC machine, titanium alloy shell. So we are talking about serious stuff here, okay? Exotic stuff. The cable here, at strand 20 core, single silver plated monocrystalline copper cable. Exotic as well. For something which is considered as top tier, this cable only comes in 4.4 mm balance or even 3.5 mm single ended. So you don't have modular option here. I have seen many LETSHUOER option which are priced lower than this, offering modular cable. Perhaps it is a purist approach from LETSHUOER. This Mystic 8 seems to be very well designed. It is very organic looking. Depending on your ear, for example, like my ear, I was able to get a very tight fitment into my ear cavity because it is almost like custom in-ear monitor, as close as you can get to custom in-ear monitor. As a result of that, what you're gonna get in return, exceedingly comfortable IEM, which you can wear for a very long period of time. You can be rest assured that it is also sealing really well. The surface of the IEM really cover everything in the ear cavity, at least to my ear, so I can barely hear anything around me. But I must admit one thing, despite having that tube and those exotic design, I am having kind of a bit of underwater kind of sensation. Meaning to say that the first time you insert this into your ear, you might get a bit of that, let's say, back pressure or something like that. So you have to like toggle it a bit like that in order to, let's say, release the pressure build up in order to get proper seal and also comfort. A hybrid with just 18 ohm of impedance, which is rather low, and also very high sensitivity at over 110 dB. So you might be wondering, you might be saying that this Mystic 8 is easy to drive, right? Not quite, because at the very minimum, I need to use something like this. Venture Electronic Devastator, a 2 VRMS ultra compact dongle, which is very powerful. I need to crank at a mark of 50 out of 100, which is considerably high for a hybrid IEM, I would say, because typically hybrid IEM would only need at around maximum 40 out of 100. What it means is that this Mystic 8 does require power in order to sound proper, and it also scales amazingly with power. It was already really amazing when I use it with this Devastator, and it scales even better when I bump up the power all the way to 1250 milliwatt from this Ibaso DX340 here, using this 4.4 mm balance like this. And I even have to use high gain. Let me just repeat this. This thing scales really well with power. You need power to experience the full potential of this IEM. Otherwise, what you're gonna get is something which is kind of a bit lean, kind of a bit lacking with the body itself, kind of a bit uninspiring with the dynamics. But once you have power, pump up into this in high gain, something like this, definitely you're gonna enjoy it. The kind of sound that you're gonna get from this Mystic 8 here will depend a lot on this here. You see, the supplied ear tip. There's 3 types of them, which is the narrow bore, this one here, and this is large bore, and this is medium bore, and they all offer different kind of sound experience. So before I proceed any further, let's just try to understand first how to choose the ear tip here. Let me just start with the medium bore. Medium bore is somewhere in between being analytical and also kind of a bit musical, but it is not exactly as resolving as when compared with using the large bore tip here. But the problem with this large bore tip here is that kind of a bit, too bright in the upper frequency, especially because it releases a bit too much of the upper frequency sparkle and energy. And it is just simply the kind of sound which I would consider as flat throughout the entire frequency range because it is meant to preserve the sound itself without any hint of coloration. So I would even say that natively, this Mystic 8 here can be considered as a bright sounding IEM, especially if you use the large bore tip. In order to get a bit of balance, a bit of, let's say, density to the body of the sound itself, I would highly recommend that you try the narrow bore tips here, which happen to be the one that I've been using for quite a while and the one that I will be talking about in this particular review. Now that we have taken care of the tips, the next thing is that where you pair it, the synergy factor. You see, the general tuning for this Mystic 8 is being transparent, neutral, uncolored, and as flat as possible. In fact, I would even remind myself that it sounds very similar to this Atimotic ER4 series here, which is a reference standard for a very long time since 1991 for anything which is considered as diffuse field neutral, total flatness. How flat is that Mystic 8 in comparison with this Atimotic ER4, you might be wondering, especially ER4 SR or even ER4S. It is flat, but it is not exactly diffuse field neutral. So the good news is that despite being kind of a bit neutral, it does exhibit a bit of coloration, especially in the lower frequency, to impart some sense of body to the sound itself. Otherwise, it would just be totally super flat and the kind of sound which is not exactly enjoyable for listening. But unless, of course, if you do monitoring, then that is the kind of thing that you want. When we talk about sound and performance of this Mystic 8, it is considered as a reference standard for monitoring, reference standard for accuracy. So what do I mean by accuracy? Accuracy simply means that you are hearing the kind of recording faithfully without any kind of alteration. Meaning that from the source itself, assuming that the source is transparent as something, for example, like this iBasso DX340 here, or even this iBasso DC Elite here. Okay. So what you're going to get is that a transparent output going up from the source itself and to the IEM itself here without any kind of alteration, no boosting in the lower frequency, and also no boosting in the upper frequency or even the mid-range. Transparent mid-range, transparent upper frequency, transparent or near transparent lower frequency. The reason I say near transparent is that because, remember again, the tips which I mentioned here, okay, especially the narrow bore, will add a bit more of body to the sound itself. So it does not sound as flat as how it was heard when using wide bore. In general, if I were to compare this Mystic 8 with the rest of the competition in the market within this price point, which is 1,000 US dollar, and I can think of one in particular which is I am so very familiar with, which is FIO FA19. I would even say that between this and FIO FA19 is a lot more technical focus. So it is a bit more analytical when it comes to macro detail or even micro detail. But the key thing is that if you have seen my review on FA19, then you might realize that FA19 does not score really well when it comes to timbre, when it comes to smoothness, because this is where Mystic 8 will have an upper hand over that FA19. It has better representation of the timbre as opposed to the more metallic, the more modern sound of FA19. Yes, now I will admit that FA19, if I were to compare with this Mystic 8, does not sound as organic sounding as this one, especially when I use this narrow bore ear tip. And it is also less bright in comparison with the FA19, which means it is less sharp with the upper mid-range itself. As for the rest of the technicality, I would say that both of them are quite comparable, especially when it comes to the rendering of the macro detail or even micro detail, with an exception like what I mentioned earlier, FA19 being a bit more pronounced with the micro detail. But when it comes to the extension itself, the depth of extension in the upper frequency or even the lower frequency, both of them are pretty much on equal footing. So you can expect, if you attach it again to something like this iBasso DX340, highly resolving, then you're going to get 100% of all available extension, of all the micro detail, the decay itself being airy, all the way, which is available within the recording itself. So this is the kind of IEM which you want if details are important to you. It is quite interesting that LETSHUOER have decided to use a combination of Knowles and Sonian's balanced amateur. So in return, what I'm hearing is that a combination of precision, technicality, details, and resolution coming from the Knowles balanced amateur, and the musical element of it coming from the Sonyan, because Sonyan is known to be a bit more better when it comes to musicality and body of sound. Also, not forgetting that this Mystic 8 being all balanced amateur setup, the staging is quite impressive really, because what I'm hearing is the kind of sound presentation which is wide as it is open sounding. It does not sound close in at all, and on top of it, it is also very holographic, because that is one of the reasons why you want to use multiple balanced amateur in the first place, or hybrid. You're gonna get very well presented spatial holographic projection, which means that this Mystic 8, on top of being suitable for monitoring, on top of being suitable for music, it is also suitable for gaming and movies. However, I must admit, Mystic 8 being highly resolving, being highly analytical, being detailed and fairly musical, is not exactly suitable for all type of music genre. It is definitely super suitable for anything to do with classical, with instrumental, or even with technical jazz, or even with some sort of, let's say, pop music. But it is not so suitable for highly energetic or already bright sounding recording. I am referring to something like rock and metal music, or even certain type of percussion music which exhibit quite a lot of hi-hat or even cymbals. You're gonna get a bit of sharpness. You're gonna get a bit of fatigue element there if you listen to it for a prolonged period of time. So just bear in mind, this thing is definitely reference standard, but reference standard usually means that they extract too much detail to a point that it can become fatiguing for a long period of time. Thank you so very much for watching the video until the end. Without skipping, I hope. Now click like and subscribe, and also follow me on Instagram under the name of AndyAV. And also, if you'd like to support me directly, because all of my videos and reviews are unpaid, I am not earning anything, you can join the membership below for behind the scene, especially for AAV Insider and above, which will allow you to see what I am doing behind the scene, and I will share some of the items which I would normally not share in the public.